There is a truth about yourself that you know but refuse to acknowledge, a recognition that lives just beneath conscious awareness but that you have spent your entire life avoiding, a reality about who you actually are that contradicts the image you maintain and the identity you perform and the person you believe yourself to be. This is not about mistakes you have made or flaws you wish you could change. This is about fundamental aspects of yourself that you cannot accept without destroying the carefully constructed self-concept that allows you to function, to maintain relationships, to see yourself in the mirror without disgust or despair. Carl Jung called this the shadow, the rejected aspects of yourself that consciousness deems unacceptable, that the ego cannot integrate without experiencing what feels like annihilation of identity. That must be kept in darkness, because bringing them into light would require admitting truths about yourself that seem unbearable. The shadow contains everything you have judged as wrong or shameful or dangerous in yourself, everything that contradicts who you need to believe you are, everything that would make you unlovable or contemptible or monstrous if it were acknowledged and seen. Most people spend their entire lives successfully avoiding this dark truth, maintain the defenses that keep it unconscious, project it onto others who become enemies carrying what they cannot own in themselves, construct elaborate justifications for behaviors that serve the shadow while consciousness remains convinced of its own goodness and innocence. The avoidance is not cowardice but is psychological necessity, is how the ego protects itself from recognizing what it cannot bear to see. But the dark truth does not disappear through avoidance. It operates beneath awareness, shapes behavior in ways consciousness does not recognize, creates the very outcomes that consciousness most fears. The dark truth that you are avoiding is not that you have flaws or that you sometimes make mistakes or that you are imperfect. These are comfortable acknowledgements that allow you to maintain the essential belief that you are a fundamentally good person who occasionally falls short. The dark truth is more threatening, more fundamental, more incompatible with the identity you have constructed. You are capable of the very things you most condemn in others. You possess the qualities you most despise. You have done harm that you refuse to acknowledge as harm, because acknowledging it would require seeing yourself as someone you cannot accept being. You judge others harshly for their selfishness while refusing to see your own, condemn their cruelty while denying the ways you are cruel, feel morally superior to their dishonesty, while maintaining elaborate self-deceptions about your own behavior and motivations. The intensity of your judgment reveals what you cannot face in yourself, points directly to the shadow qualities you have most thoroughly rejected, exposes through projection what you will not own directly. The person you despise, the one whose behavior disgusts you, the one you feel completely unlike and superior to, this person is mirror showing you what you have denied in yourself. Your enemy is not truly other, but is externalized version of your own rejected shadow, is carrying the qualities you possess but cannot acknowledge, is allowing you to hate in them what you cannot face in yourself. This is the mechanism that allows you to avoid the dark truth, by projecting your unacceptable qualities onto others, by seeing in them what you refuse to see in yourself, by making them the repository of everything you cannot be. You maintain the illusion that you are fundamentally different, fundamentally better, fundamentally not the kind of person who could possess such qualities or commit such acts. But the projection does not eliminate the shadow, only makes it invisible to you while remaining obvious to others who can see what you cannot, who recognize the hypocrisy you are blind to, who notice the gap between who you claim to be and who you actually are in your behaviors and choices, and the effects you have on those around you. The dark truth operates whether you acknowledge it or not, shapes your life whether you see it or not, creates outcomes that consciousness cannot understand because consciousness refuses to see its own role in creating them. The specific dark truth you are avoiding varies by person but follows predictable patterns. You claim to value honesty but lie constantly, not through overt falsehoods, but through omissions and manipulations, and performances of authenticity that are carefully calculated to create impressions you know are false. You present yourself as struggling when you are doing fine, because victimhood provides advantages you are unwilling to acknowledge seeking. You perform vulnerability strategically, revealing carefully selected weaknesses that make you appear authentic, while hiding the actual ugliness you cannot allow others to see. You claim to be kind, but your kindness is performance that serves your need to be seen as good rather than genuine care for others. Is transaction where you provide help in exchange for gratitude and admiration and the validation that you are a generous person. When people do not respond with sufficient appreciation, when they take your help without providing the emotional payoff you expected, you become resentful, feel used, reveal that the kindness was never unconditional but was always conditional on receiving the recognition you needed. You claim to want equality and justice, but benefit from and protect the very systems that create inequality, make token gestures toward change while ensuring that nothing fundamentally threatens your position or privileges, feel virtuous for acknowledging injustice while doing nothing that actually costs you anything, mistake awareness for action, and treat your enlightened opinions as substitute for material sacrifice or actual redistribution of resources and power that real change would require. You claim to love but use love as weapon and as chain, perform devotion while manipulating through guilt and obligation, create dependencies that serve your need for control while calling this love, damage those closest to you through your unacknowledged needs and your refusal to see how your behavior affects them, blame them for problems you create, make yourself victim in conflicts you initiated. The dark truth is that you are not the person you believe yourself to be, that the gap between your self-concept and your actual behavior is vast, that you cause harm while maintaining innocence, that you are selfish while performing generosity, that you manipulate while claiming authenticity, that you are cruel while identifying as kind, and you know this at some level. Recognize it in moments of clarity that you immediately suppress. Feel the cognitive dissonance between who you claim to be and who you actually are, but you cannot bear to look at it directly without the defenses that make it tolerable. The reason you cannot face the dark truth is that your entire identity is built on denying it. Your self-worth depends on maintaining the fiction that you are fundamentally different from those you condemn. Your relationships are structured around others seeing you as you want to be seen, rather than as you actually are. Acknowledging the dark truth would require dismantling everything you have built, would mean losing the identity you have spent your life constructing, would force you to see yourself as someone you have always believed you were not. This is why the defenses are so strong, why the avoidance is so complete, why even when evidence of your shadow is overwhelming, you find ways to explain it away or minimize it or reframe it as something other than what it actually is. You were tired, you were stressed, you were provoked, they deserved it, it was not really harmful, everyone does this, it was justified by the circumstances, it was their fault for making you act that way. The rationalizations are endless, because the alternative, simple acknowledgement that you did harm because you are capable of harm, is unbearable. The dark truth also includes recognizing that you have wasted time, that the life you have built is partly based on avoiding what you actually want, that you have sacrificed authentic desires to maintain acceptable image, that you are living someone else's script rather than your own, because living authentically would require acknowledging aspects of yourself that consciousness has deemed unacceptable. You have spent years, perhaps decades, performing a version of yourself that gains approval while the actual person remains hidden and unknown and unexpressed. You chose the safe career over the authentic one, chose the acceptable relationship over the genuine one, chose the respectable life over the meaningful one, and now you are trapped in choices you cannot undo without admitting that you have been living inauthentically, that you have wasted precious years on performances and pursuits that do not reflect who you actually are, beneath the adaptations and the need for approval and the fear of rejection if you showed your real self. The dark truth includes recognizing that you knew, that at every choice point you felt the split between what you actually wanted and what you chose, that you betrayed yourself repeatedly while telling yourself you had no choice, that the person you have become is not who you would have been if you had the courage to face yourself honestly. The dark truth also includes the ways you have harmed others while maintaining your innocence, the damage you have caused while telling yourself you were blameless, the people you have hurt while experiencing yourself as victim in the very situations where you were perpetrator. You remember events differently than they occurred, edit your memories to preserve your self-concept, rewrite history so that you are always justified and they were always wrong, construct narratives where your harmful actions were defensive responses to their provocations, rather than acknowledging that you initiated the harm. The relationship that ended badly was their fault for being unreasonable, for not appreciating you, for failing to meet your needs, and you remember nothing of your own behavior that created the conditions for the ending, nothing of your cruelty or your withdrawals or your manipulations that made the relationship unbearable for them. The friendship that dissolved was because they changed or became toxic or could not handle your success, and you remember nothing of how you used them or betrayed confidences, or were unavailable when they needed you while expecting their constant availability when you needed them. You have caused pain that you refuse to acknowledge as pain, because acknowledging it would require admitting that you are capable of cruelty, that you have chosen your own needs over others' well-being, that you have used people and discarded them when they were no longer useful, that you have manipulated and lied and betrayed while maintaining the story that you are a good person who would never do such things. The dark truth is that you have done them repeatedly, and you have constructed elaborate defenses that prevent you from seeing clearly what you have done and what it reveals about who you actually are. The truth also includes recognizing your cowardice, the ways you have avoided confrontation when honesty was required, the times you have remained silent when speaking would have cost you something, the situations where you chose your comfort over doing what was right, where you knew what should be done but did not do it, because doing it would have required courage you did not possess. You have watched injustice and said nothing, have witnessed harm and looked away, have protected yourself while sacrificing others, and you have told yourself you had no choice. You could not have made a difference. It was not your responsibility. The dark truth extends to recognizing that you enjoy certain aspects of your suffering, that you derive secondary gains from problems you claim to want to solve, that you are invested in maintaining difficulties that provide you with identity or excuse or the moral high ground of victimhood. You complain about your circumstances while subtly sabotaging every opportunity to change them because change would require giving up the benefits that suffering provides. The sympathy, the excuse for not attempting what you might fail at, the identity as someone who has overcome obstacles, the justification for not taking risks that might expose your limitations. You maintain the difficult relationship because it allows you to be the long-suffering partner, the one who is trying so hard, the victim of someone else's dysfunction while refusing to see how you benefit from this dynamic, how it protects you from having to be in relationship with someone who would require more of you, who would not tolerate the behaviors you engage in, who would challenge you to grow in ways that feel threatening. You keep the unrewarding job because it gives you something to complain about while protecting you from the vulnerability of pursuing work you actually care about, work where failure would be meaningful rather than being proof that the system is unjust. You hold onto grudges because unforgiveness gives you power over those who wronged you, keeps you morally superior, provides ongoing justification for your resentment and your withholding, allows you to punish them indefinitely while experiencing yourself as the injured party. Forgiveness would require giving up this power, would mean they are no longer in your debt, would eliminate the leverage that your victimhood provides. The dark truth is that you are not as committed to change as you claim, that you do not actually want to solve the problems you spend so much time discussing, that your struggles are partly chosen because they serve needs you cannot acknowledge. You are more invested in being right than in being happy, more committed to your narratives than to your growth, more attached to your identity as victim or as someone who has been wronged than to the freedom that comes from letting go and moving forward. This recognition is unbearable because it means you cannot blame circumstances or others for where you are, cannot maintain the story that you would change if only external conditions were different, must face that you are participating in creating the very life you claim to want to escape. The dark truth also includes recognizing that you take pleasure in others' failures, that you feel satisfaction when those you envy experience setbacks, that beneath your performed sympathy is genuine enjoyment of their suffering, because it confirms that they are not actually superior to you, that their success was temporary or undeserved, that you were right to doubt them. You call this Schadenfreude to make it seem normal, but you refuse to see how dark it is that others' pain brings you pleasure, how much this reveals about the envy and resentment you claim not to feel. When someone you know fails, when their relationship ends, or their career falters, or their life falls apart, you perform concern while internally feeling relief or satisfaction or vindication. You tell yourself you are worried about them while actually enjoying their descent to your level, while feeling pleased that they are no longer making you feel inadequate by their success. You offer help that is partly genuine and partly about establishing your superiority now that they are vulnerable, about reversing the power dynamic that made you feel lesser. The truth includes recognizing how small you are, how petty, how concerned with trivial slights and minor injustices, while ignoring actual harm you could address. How much energy you waste on feeling offended or wronged, while taking no action on issues that actually matter. You collect grievances like trophies, remember every slight and every unfairness while forgetting your own transgressions. Maintain careful accounting of what others owe you while dismissing what you owe them. You are fragile in ways you cannot admit, require constant validation and reassurance, cannot tolerate being wrong or criticized, or seeing yourself as anything other than good and capable and deserving. Your entire psychology is organized around protecting this fragile ego, around avoiding situations that would expose your limitations, around maintaining the carefully curated image that allows you to function without confronting how inadequate you feel beneath the performance of competence. The dark truth is that you are afraid, that beneath all the posturing and the performance and the carefully maintained facade is terror of being seen as you actually are, of being rejected if people knew the truth, of being alone if you could not maintain the masks, of discovering that without the performances there is nothing substantial beneath them, that the person you have spent your life avoiding is the only person you actually are. The question that remains is whether you will continue avoiding the dark truth or whether you will finally face it, whether you will maintain the defenses that keep you unconscious, or whether you will risk the disintegration that honest self-examination threatens, whether you will spend your entire life performing and projecting and denying, or whether you will have the courage to see yourself as you actually are, rather than as you need to believe you are. Most people never face it. They die without ever acknowledging the shadow, without ever owning what they projected, without ever seeing clearly the harm they caused or the ways they betrayed themselves and others. They maintain the defenses until the end, protect the ego from the truth that would shatter it, choose comfortable self-deception over unbearable self-knowledge. This is not moral failure but is psychological necessity for most people, is how they survive without being destroyed by recognition they cannot integrate. But some do face it, do the brutal work of looking directly at what they have spent their lives avoiding, do acknowledge the shadow and begin the painful process of integration, do recognize that they are capable of what they condemned, that they have caused harm they refuse to see, that they are not who they believe themselves to be. This facing is not single moment, but is ongoing practice, is repeated confrontations with truth that consciousness wants to deny, is choosing honesty over comfort again and again, despite the pain this choice creates. The facing does not make you a better person immediately, does not eliminate the shadow or transform you into someone fundamentally different, but it makes you more honest, more aware, less likely to unconsciously enact the very behaviors you consciously condemn, less likely to project your darkness onto others and make them enemies, more capable of taking responsibility for harm you cause, rather than constructing elaborate defenses that maintain your innocence. The dark truth is that you are not who you think you are. that you are capable of what you most despise, that you have caused harm you refuse to acknowledge, that you are afraid and small and petty and cruel beneath the performances of strength and generosity and kindness. But the darker truth is that you know this already, have always known it, have spent your entire life and enormous psychological energy avoiding what part of you recognizes clearly but cannot bear to face directly. Conclusion: the dark truth about yourself that you are too afraid to face is not single revelation, but is constellation of recognitions that threaten the identity you have constructed, that contradict the self-concept you maintain, that expose the gap between who you claim to be and who you actually are in your behaviors and your effects on others. You possess the qualities you most condemn in others. You have caused harm while maintaining your innocence. You have betrayed yourself and others while constructing narratives where you are always justified and they are always wrong. You have wasted time on performances and pursuits that do not reflect your authentic desires, have chosen safety over authenticity, have protected your ego at the cost of genuine living. You derive secondary gains from suffering you claim to want to eliminate, take pleasure in others' failures while performing sympathy, maintain petty grievances while ignoring actual harm you could address. You are fragile beneath the facade of strength, terrified of being seen as you actually are, organized around avoiding self-knowledge that would shatter the carefully maintained image. This dark truth operates whether you acknowledge it or not, shapes your life whether you see it or not, creates the very outcomes that consciousness cannot understand because consciousness refuses to recognize its own role. The projection onto others, the elaborate rationalizations, the selective memory, the defensive narratives, all these mechanisms protect the ego from recognizing what it cannot bear to see, but the protection comes at enormous cost. You remain unconscious of what drives you. You repeat patterns you do not understand. You create harm you refuse to acknowledge. You live inauthentically while believing you are being genuine. The question is whether you will continue the avoidance or whether you will risk facing what you have spent your life denying. Most will choose avoidance, will maintain the defenses until death, will never see themselves clearly. But the invitation remains, to look directly at the shadow you have projected, to acknowledge the harm you have caused, to see the gap between your self-concept and your actual behavior, to recognize that you are capable of what you condemn and have done what you claim you would never do. This facing is not comfortable or easy or complete in single moment. It is brutal, ongoing practice of choosing honesty over self-deception, of withdrawing projections and owning what you placed onto others, of acknowledging rather than rationalizing harm, of seeing yourself as you are rather than as you need to believe you are. But it is only path to genuine change, to living with awareness rather than unconsciousness, to being responsible for what you create rather than remaining victim of forces you refuse to see clearly. The dark truth is waiting. It has always been there. The only question is whether you will finally stop running from it